Good afternoon, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. Today we are honored again to have Kittu Reddy with us on the ideal of human unity. And I believe we're in chapter 3, Kittu.
Yeah, we are in chapter 3.
Good.
Start. So last time we discussed that whenever you are living in a collectivity, there has to be an authority. That authority is called in political language the state. So usually the state, it is state versus the individual, usually, because individual wants more freedom and more freedom, state automatically to a great extent or to a certain extent reduces that freedom.
Wants to limit it.
Huh?
To limit it. To limit the freedom.
To limit the freedom
an
or
extent.
even to suppress it.
Even to suppress
it depends
it,
on the
yes,
state.
yes.
But then after having said this, and the next important thing is that the size of the state is of no importance. Whether it is the head of the family or whether it is the head of the institution or whether it is the head of the province or the nation and ultimately of the international community. But the next thing that he is saying is that if you study history, and since the whole process of history speaks of evolution from matter to life to mind and might be beyond mind, they say that individuality is the fruit of the conscious mind. As long as you don't have a mind, you have hardly any individuality. So the animals have no individuality, but they have a very limited area. But man, the mental being, definitely starts having individuality, and the more he develops his mind, the more he demands individual freedom. But history tells us that we started with matter and life. So actually what they are trying to say is that individuality is a product of the mind. Before that there is no individuality. But then there is a tradition which Sri Aurobindo says it is not safe to ignore. There might be a truth in it. That there was a society at a certain time which was called the Golden Age, which was not bound by laws or institutions or rules and regulations. Each individual was left free, and in that freedom they learned to live happily without any problems. So, as he says, you may say that they were antisocial. No, they were unsocial but not antisocial. They need not mix with everybody, but they were not antisocial. Today, you are afraid that if you give that freedom, they will become antisocial. So this is a tradition which it is not wise to ignore. There must have been in the race memory of mankind a period of this type. And I would like to believe that this is exactly what Mother wanted. In Auroville as well as in the ashram. The difference is that in ashram you are accepted only when you are a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. In Auroville you don't even need to know about Sri Aurobindo, but you believe in world unity. So gradually you find that in order to bring about world unity, you must know Sri Aurobindo. So this was a tradition which he says it is not wise to ignore.
Do you feel that it was comparable to a previous Satyuga?
Might be. Mother is preparing the Satya Yuga, it might take time. In fact, today morning I was reading that it might take 100 years, it might take 1000 years, but it is bound to happen. To Huta she has written, it will happen. It might take 50 years, it might take 100 years. She didn't speak of 1000 years. But it is inevitable because that is the ultimate goal that we are moving towards. So, as he says, it is better not to be ignore this tradition. So, his last sentence is our destiny may be the conversion of an original animal association into a community of the gods. So, when that freedom was there, they were not highly developed, but they were harmonious. So, from the animal association into the association of gods, right? Our progress may be a devious round leading from the easy and spontaneous uniformity and harmony which reflects nature to the self-possessed unity which reflects the divine. And this, to a certain extent, you will find among children. A 5-year-old, 6-year-old, they fight and then everything is all right again. We fight and it is far more serious. All right. Anyway, this is, as he says, legend and tradition. Actually, on the ground level, man is always living in a group, and in the group there are two broad types of group. One is the state idea, where the state dominates and suppresses all freedom. As he says, ancient Sparta, where there was no freedom, everybody had to be join the army and be military, etc., etc. And then he speaks of Germany, not now, but Germany at one time, under Hitler probably. Another asserts the supremacy of the state, but seeks at the same time to give as much freedom, power, and dignity as is consistent with its control to the individuals who constitute it. So the state will give you a fair amount of freedom, but not that much freedom which they cannot control.
An example?
Almost all the countries of the world today. The United States, Great Britain, India, right? The state is always there. It can interfere at any moment. But it gives you some freedom. And the states which don't give you freedom today are probably North Korea and China, and at one time the Soviet Union. Today the Soviet Union has certainly given a fair amount of freedom, right?
Some of the Middle Eastern countries.
Some of the Middle Eastern countries, right?
Yeah.
So if you look around, you will find, samplings of both types. But today, out of the 199 or 200 countries in the world, I think the majority give a reasonable amount of freedom. That word reasonable is subject to a lot of interpretation, but it is there. So he gives these two examples, but then he gives a third example, which I shall read the sentence. But to these two has been added a third type, in which the state abdicates as much as possible to the individual, boldly asserts that it exists for his growth and to assure his freedom, dignity, successful manhood, utmost possible liberty of the individual, which will best assure the well-being, strength and expansion of the state. Huge amount of freedom. And then he says, of this type, England has been until recently the great exemplar. England of 150 years back. He says, England rendered free, prosperous, energetic, invincible by nothing else but the strength of this idea within her, blessed by the gods with unexampled expansion, empire and good fortune, because she has not feared at any time to obey this great tendency and take the risks of this great endeavor and even often to employ it beyond the limits of our own insular egoism. So now I'll illustrate this sentence. The British Empire was at one time a huge empire where the sun never sets. So they had India, which included India, Pakistan, and the whole subcontinent. But who conquered India first? The East India Company, which is an individual initiative. They came for trade to Surat. Then they found that they were all fighting among themselves, the Indian states. Gradually, with the support of the British government, they conquered the whole thing. When there was a revolt in 1857, known as the Sepoy Mutiny, in 1858, for the first time, India came under direct British rule, ruled by Parliament and Queen Victoria. So in 1858, Queen Victoria became the Queen of India. But they are ruling us from 1757. Individual initiative.
100 years.
Yes. So they trusted the individual. Same thing in South Africa. It was Livingstone who went there. And he brought South Africa under the control, supported by the British army, no doubt, but they left it to him. Even the United States of America, it is the Pilgrim Fathers. They went and they got the 13 states. Then those 13 states decided to rebel against England and moved out, and then they annexed the whole continent, and you have the United States of America today. They left the initiative to the individual.
And many of them were Masons.
In
America.
the United States, yes, they were Masons. They came mainly from Ireland, I think, the Pilgrim Fathers. Right. So anyway, this is a very important thing. You trust the individual and leave him, and then see what happens. If he is good, he might produce something which is very beneficial to the community. If he is bad, it can be a disaster. But it's a risk that is worth taking. And that is exactly what the mother believed. And mother did. As much as possible, give freedom to the individual. Just go ahead. Then, inevitably, in due course, if there are corrections to be made, if the individual is good, he will. And that is the big argument that is now going on in politics, now means for a long time, public sector versus private sector. The private sector is based on individualism. The individual builds up something, a company. His main aim is profit for himself. But when he is profiting, the country is also benefiting. Sometimes by technology, sometimes giving jobs, etc., etc. So don't crush the individual. This balancing act is very important. So England started in that way. So he says, there are two things which have to be in the next sentence. Unfortunately, that egoism, the defects of the race, and the exaggerated assertion of a limited idea. I'll just finish this sentence, which is the mark of our human ignorance, have prevented her from giving it the noblest and richest possible expression, or to realize by it other results which the more strictly organized states have attained or are attaining. Two things. One is the egoism of England, which naturally, whenever there is ego, it spoils everything. The other one is the exaggerated assertion of a limited idea. Here the idea is individualism. Give a lot of individualism. There is a great truth in it. But the opposite also has some truth. That when you organize yourself in a collectivity, you can produce sometimes much faster results and more effective. See? So that is why you have to go on combining opposite ideas. individuality by all means, but collectivism also by all means. Now, if you take only one idea, then the other is killed, and if you take this idea, this other is killed. Right? So, this is the, as he calls it, which is the mark of our human ignorance. And this will lead me to the next advice that both Sri Aurobindo and Mother have given. Every time you assert an idea, or somebody asserts an idea, look at the opposite and see if there is a truth in that. So it becomes thesis, antithesis, and then try to go above, and you will find that there is a way of combining and harmonizing these two. And Sri Aurobindo says himself that when in my intellectual development there was a time when I could see the truth of this idea and I could see the truth of the opposite idea, and then in one stroke the prestige of the intellect was gone. Because now which one will you follow? If this is true and this is true, which will you follow? That made him seek for a higher truth which will reconcile these two, or if it does not exist, then constant compromise. So that is where you move higher up. And Sri Aurobindo says that it was an extremely important stage in my intellectual development which led to my spiritual development. And actually, as a matter of fact, if you are honest with yourself, you never decide by reason. You can give the opposite argument. Then you start thinking, what do I do? Then you decide subjectively. It can be a lower subjectivism, vital, I like this person. It can be mental. It can be something higher still. But ultimately, all decisions that we take are subjective. Right? And I will tell you very frankly regarding this. When you edit, remove this part. When you ask me to speak on the ideal of human unity, there are people who are abusing me in the ashram, showing off, etc., etc. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I took some time to decide, should I or should I not? Because why get these abuses and confront all that? Then I thought for some time, and then I said, Mother, you tell me what I should do. And then I think I got the answer that, look, with Narad it is all right, go ahead. But with many others I have refused point blank. Or I take classes where I don't allow them to record. Because it might be misused, it might be distorted, So now this is a feeling which I got. I believe that I got the right feeling. I'm sure that you also believe, otherwise you wouldn't keep calling me, right? But I've always left it as might be.
Now, this morning, I had a discussion, or last night actually, and I'm against capital punishment. Sumati is strongly for capital punishment.
Our ex-student.
Yes, yes.
Now, what does she mean for? What do you mean by for? In some cases or?
All cases she wants capital punishment. All cases I don't want to see another soul killed. And there seems to be no
point of reconciliation.
No point of reconciliation.
So now I'll tell you one thing.
Good.
It's a matter of fact. I don't remember the years, but sometime between 51 and 57, when the mother used to come to the playground, she used to distribute groundnuts. All the groups would stand in line, and after distributing for the very young children, she would come and distribute to everybody. And we would be waiting in line, and since we were the young men's group, we were last. So it would take normally about 20 minutes for mother to come down to us. So we are chatting among ourselves, and the topic was capital punishment. So when mother came nearby, she saw that we are animatedly discussing. She asked, what is the matter? So we said it is capital punishment, that some believe that no capital punishment, some believe in some cases capital punishment. So mother said, in some cases capital punishment. Then she explained that you have to be able to find out whether the soul wants to go and come back in another body.
That's totally different. Yes.
No more progress is possible.
Yeah.
Or there is still scope for progress.
And I believe Sri Aurobindo said this, that Sri Aurobindo said that he was not for capital punishment in general.
Might be in general, but as you see, mother has shifted it to the subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that I, as the judge who has to decide, unless I am in contact with that inner personality,
Yes.
I think it will be a mental judgment which will be
Exactly.
argued by either this side or that side.
Right.
And a big debate is going on now in India. There is a judge who believes that capital punishment must be there. Rapists must be capital punishment. Now the psychology behind this is this. The psychology of those who don't want capital punishment is that give him a chance for changing. It is always possible to reform. The others said no. A man can't do this kind of act out of impulse. It must be something very deep-rooted wrong. He has to be removed, and it has to be an example to any others who are having the same idea. So they want to put the fear of God into other possible criminals. Right? Now mother believes that ideal, that change cannot take place by fear. No real change takes place by fear. You have to decide to change, and then you will get the help. But otherwise, you cannot change. So you see, mother has shifted the problem to a very deep subjective level. And this is where I am trying to say that whatever I say mentally is an opinion. And you have the opposite opinion. We do not know who is right. But then, if I am the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and I don't have access to my psychic being, well, I have to give an opinion which will be argued and argued and argued all. But since I am in power, it has to be done. And this is a big problem that is taking place now in India. Whatever happens at any level, ultimately when the Supreme Court pronounces a verdict, it is final. People are challenging that. They are also human beings. What is their great quality? They have studied law. And their aspect is sometimes very narrow because they are only legal. So, then where do you go? Is it Parliament? Many people say it is Parliament because it is there only for 5 years. And secondly, the people have elected them. Right? So, there are arguments on both sides. In America, Supreme Court is final. If it gives an opinion, it is finished. It's over. In England, Parliament is final. Supreme Court will almost consult the Parliament. In India, we are somewhere in between. So I got articles the other day. On what basis can the Supreme Court decide? Right. So, and in the Indian Constitution, it's so badly written, as far as the Hindus are concerned, right?
Well, I see that every day.
Yeah, so now they are demanding a change in the Constitution.
Yes.
But the Supreme Court, if it says no, you can't do anything.
But we have amendments to the Constitution in America.
But
many amendments.
Yes, we have amendment, but the Supreme Court supported it. But if the Supreme Court says no, then it is very difficult. It's a very difficult problem that we are facing today. So, should Kashmir be an integral part of India, or should there be Article 370? You can't go and buy property in Kashmir today. Nobody from outside Kashmir can buy. But in any other state, you can go and buy. If you have the money, you can buy property. In Kashmir, it is only for those who are living there already. The result is that it is, in a sense, not part of India. In a sense. So now there is a very strong demand. Now we have to see what the Supreme Court will do. It's called Article 30A. Right? So what do you believe? What should happen? Scrap Article 30A or leave Kashmir as a special entity?
I don't know, like if a very direct decision can be taken in terms of...
No, what would you like to take?
I would like to remove Article 370.
And I think Narendra Modi government is going to do it. Because he is categorical.
I think so.
But he has to go step by step.
But even that decision has kind of consequences in terms of Pakistan. You know, like it's already like kind of influencing the people there, and they have militant organizations and everything. So how does one balance this?
That is a political game, which he has to do. But if he has decided that Kashmir is an integral part of India without any separate, right, then he'll have to find ways and means. Might be he'll do it after 2019, when the elections are over, because otherwise he'll lose the Muslim vote. So he has to go very carefully. But the basic question is Kashmir an integral part of India or not? If yes, make it integral. Just like Bengal has its own culture, Tamil Nadu has its own culture, Andhra Pradesh, Kashmir is also its own culture. Personally, I believe that it should be done.
Oh, Mother's map is
Mother's
clear.
map is very clear.
Very clear.
No, but I can't talk to others in the name of Mother.
Understand.
So he says, unfortunately, by not realizing two things, the English egoism and the limited value of an idea, that freedom which was there has been lost in England. He believes that if it was, I'll read the last sentence, one may well ask oneself whether it was really necessary, whether by a more courageous faith, enlightened by a more flexible and vigilant intelligence, all the desirable results might not have been attained by a new and freer method that would yet keep intact the dharma of the race. See, now this is very important. And I think this applies very much to Auroville. Because Auroville has to grow in freedom. But one lady, she was my student, she is living there. She says a lot of control today.
Oh, yes.
Huh?
Yes.
And it goes against the spirit of Auroville. So I said, you see, it's a very difficult question to answer. So those who are there will know better.
But Mother said, I want no rules for
Exactly.
Auroville. And then she made one rule, no drugs.
No?
Drugs.
Yes.
That's the only rule she made, no drugs. And it was necessary because at that time many were coming.
No, and drugs is not only bad, it is illegal.
Yes.
Today you can be arrested, right? And smuggling and drugs, these are two things which are totally illegal. And I remember in 1973 January, when we used to go to Mother every alternate day, Kirit, Tanmay and myself. There was a Frenchman
Who went to Mother?
Kirit,
Kirit. And you.
Tanmay and myself. We used to meet Mother every alternate day for about 4 months, from November end to March 29th. Then after that, mother withdrew.
Yeah.
So we used to meet her every alternate day.
Oh.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, 7 to 7:30. The important thing is all the desirable results might not have been attained by a new and freer method that would yet keep intact the dharma of the race. So you see, this is exactly what Auroville should do.
Yes, it was Orville and the rules.
Yes.
Freedom in Orville.
There should be very much more freedom. But for that, you need a flexible and vigilant intelligence. That means now you decide no freedom here for this person, but make it individual. Don't make a law by which freedom is suppressed. I don't know what is happening, but I hear two sides of the story. Some people feel that a lot of freedom has been taken away. You should know better.
I have that experience also.
Okay. Oh, you have the experience, not only knowing.
Not only knowing. My daughter is involved.
Huh?
Shally, my daughter is involved in these committees. And there are many rules.
Now, the one more idea, I will not finish the chapter still, that he says, what form the state may assume is not important. It might be a monarch, it might be an autocrat, it might be a democratically elected leader. And in fact, a democratically elected leader, it is more dangerous if he becomes autocratic, because he will say, I am democratically elected. You have chosen me. I am going to do what I think is right. Naturally, I can't do what you think is right. The king, monarch, autocrat, you say, oh, they are bad people. But the only thing about this monarchically elected representative is that he has 4 years or 5 years. And therefore, he has to always keep his eye on the ground. If I have no chance of coming, then I will not take decisions which will go against them, right? So it is not important what the form of the state is. It can be a monarch, it can be an autocrat, and it can be a democratically elected leader, right? And I do not know what people are thinking about Trump, but there are many people who have written articles in which they feel that he is an autocrat. I have no idea. And Mrs. Bill Clinton, of course, Mrs. Clinton is writing a lot of things against him. That might be political, but if there is a truth in it, then it's a problem to be. In fact, an elected leader who becomes an autocrat is more dangerous than an autocratic leader, right? And it is that which led Louis XIV, who is the symbol of autocracy, to say, l'état c'est moi. That means I am the state. Now Shrivinda says it is a mixture of truth and falsehood. It is a truth because the authority, the state, is representative of the community. If the head of state is found shoplifting, and if I am found shoplifting, my thing will not make any news, but that fellow will say, oh, the Prime Minister of India is doing this. That becomes the way. So in that sense, he is really the state. But in the other sense, that he is beyond all the individuals and that he can do what he likes, that is a falsehood. So he is a representative of the individuals and he cannot ignore the individuals who have elected him. Right? So this is something which in democracy one has to be very carefully balancing. And I am told, this you should tell me, that the American system, you can have more votes and yet not be elected because it is the
Electoral college. Electoral college.
Electoral college.
Yes.
So I'm told that Trump did not get the majority. He got less.
Much less.
And yet he has become the president of India, of the United States. So now, I mean, really they're beginning to think whether the system reflects the true feeling of the people of.
There's a lot of questioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Electoral college was based on population of certain states.
yeah,
But
that has remained.
that's not the popular vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So electoral college and popular vote. In Britain it is popular vote. In India it is more or less popular vote. So I think we stop here today.
I think so. Very good.